Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you're either viewing this on YouTube or listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime. As always, we invite your input. You're welcome to text us or email us at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing and what we can do to make this better. I am extremely happy today to welcome a classmate of mine, a friend of mine, and a servant of the Baton Rouge community, Chauna Banks, who is currently Metro Council District 2 representative and running for House District 63. Chauna, welcome to the Thrive podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It is absolutely an honor and a pleasure to be here this morning.
So tell me this. What's wrong with the Democratic Party? Can we just start there?
Yeah.
We're running what I consider to be an anemic race for governor.
Yes.
With a candidate that we're going to try our best to support, but who does not seem to be winning over the people that we need to win over in order to be successful against the juggernaut that is Jeff Landry. I have concerns about state politics with regard to the governorship. I think Jeff Landry would be worse than even Bobby Jindal was. We don't have adequate representation in either the House or the Senate. Republicans have supermajorities in both houses. What's wrong with the Democratic Party?
I think we've lost our identity, our purpose, our vision, and we've become so assimilated that that we give in so easily. It's just a matter of principles, and there aren't any. We're a divided foe. There's that crawfish in the barrel mentality. There's, quite honestly, a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of fear of losing whatever envisioned position that many of our Democratic leaders, especially that are black, feel that they have. And we're constantly selling each other out. That's the bottom line.
You use the word assimilated. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Well, I've literally talked to, let's just say that this is not a time that I would have wanted to be fighting prior to civil rights, Jim Crow. Somehow, as professional black persons that suddenly for the last 40, 50 years have gained political power, especially in Louisiana as it relates to our local government, as well as our state government, and even our federal government. We think we've arrived. Whatever the seeds sowed to get us to those positions, it has caused us to say, what have you done for me lately? And we don't feel that black people are doing it. So we've moved away from our base. Many of our representatives, they've begun to live such a lifestyle that they are now needed, and they aren't free to speak for the very purpose that we all fought for, black representation. So the black representation on a lot of cases that we have now, it's basically me, my, us, for, and no more. And that's what's unfortunate. And the real problem is our young people see it. So when I talk to young millennials, for the most part, they actually, in a lot of cases, really value the Trump mentality. because they feel that at least we get in the true person. And so that is a real problem. In going out registering young people, they are registering as Republicans more than we would like to admit. And it's really a fact that we've lost a true, woeful, committed, united identity as both a Democratic Party as well as our Black people that really made a substantial amount of advances as being part of that Democratic Party.
You said that young people are registering as Republican. If I were to ask you to differentiate between a Democrat and a Republican in today's environment, what would you
At which
say?
level of government?
Well, we're talking about state government. That's the office
Sure.
that you're seeking. So let's talk about it from a state standpoint.
Again, I'll just share some of the experiences that I have had in the
Okay.
fight. So beginning in 2015, when I commissioned the NBR Now Blue Ribbon Commission, it was to get an ER in North Baton Rouge. We had looked at Howell Place, a 3-story building, medical complex fitted for such purpose. And me leading that effort along with other advocates, there was not one Black representative at the state level that supported that. We had a meeting with, I think it's the chief of staff and many of the persons that represented the governor's staff, and they literally said, you need to go back and talk to your Baton Rouge delegation. And we were like, why? And they're like, because they say that you don't need it. The same $6 million you're looking for, they're asking that we put it somewhere else. So that's an example of what we are facing when I fought for the Baton Rouge Zoo to stay in its current location. It was state representative. Once we started doing public records requests, it were people on the state level that actually wrote letters of support to move the Baton Rouge Zoo. Those are the untold stories that we're fighting with. And recently someone called me and they're like, and I don't put a lot of weight in endorsements, and so I haven't seen endorsements, probably won't ever see them, but they're like, wow, there's all the state legislature not supporting you. And I said, because I bring a sense of concern for the people. And though I've grown to the point where I'm not the call it out kind of person that I used to be, I've learned other strategic tactics that are just as effective. So there's a certain amount of fear. I don't care how long you've been there, how much money you have, or where you live. Nothing beats truth. And when I see that there's going to be a situation where we are selling out the very people who elect us and need us, yes, I am going to be someone who they'll have to contend with.
Okay. And I appreciate that answer. But I asked you a different question.
Okay, sorry.
Differentiate for me
Okay.
what a state-level Democrat is versus a state-level Republican.
Well, I mean,
That's not to dismiss what you said.
Yeah,
I appreciate what you
got
said.
you.
But I want to. You said that young people are registering Republican. I want you to help me understand what they see in the Republican Party that would make them register that way.
they see the same thing they see when they look at videos, music videos. They see money, they see success, they see movers and shakers, they see influence. Those are the things that they see opportunities. They see being welcomed, regardless as to where you are on the spectrum of being male, female, rich, Black, gay, lesbian, straight, whatever it is, that in the fact that whether they can actually attain that or live it through someone else, that is the draw. They don't see that in the Democratic Party. So our young people are hungry for advancement without any really without our necessary traditional methods by which we see as advancement. Get an education, get a good job, buy a house, whatever. They don't see that. Nobody's really talking about how do we get there, and there are so many systemic barriers and a lack of information, and we've moved 2 to 3 generations in families where they actually live that experience for whatever reason. So our kids want to microwave everything. And they may not even know the struggles that they see on the video. They may not know the struggles they see in the Republican Party. But what they know is that's what I want.
Do they perceive the Republican Party as being pro-Black?
We're very individualized, and though, as you know, we have organizations, NAACP, Black Power, all that, and those are organizations that are trying to empower Blacks, increase voter registration, increase civil engagement. But our young people are very individualized, so it's how can I benefit from this? So they're not looking at the party in terms of race. They're basically looking at the parties in terms of success. How will I benefit from whatever and they're not as astute in how people are voting. They're not as astute as what that means, affirmative action. Our Black generation right now, that is not even part of their equation, even though they may be benefiting from it. They don't know that. They just know I applied, this is what happened, whatever. My students, I work at a high school, and our students don't know that they can't get an abortion. You know, when they're coming up pregnant and their plan is an abortion, and you know, as a counselor, I'm like, you cannot get an abortion. I mean, I've had them where they phantom that experience all the way to saying they have an appointment, and then they just drop out.
So,
did I do a good job?
Yes, you did. That was an answer to my question.
Okay, good.
And it leads me to this question: whose responsibility is it to better educate our young people so that they can draw more clear lines of delineation between parties? Is that the party's responsibility? Is that the community's responsibility? Is that the home's responsibility? Who's accountable for the fact that there's a generation of Black people who are, I'm going to use this word, defecting from the Democratic Party and aligning themselves with Republicans, when from my perspective, Republicans don't have the best interests of Black people at heart? Right. Who's responsible for that defection? As
an elected official, I believe it's the elected official. You know, rules without relationship breeds rebellion. And so we have persons that are in the elected capacity who are not modeling the behavior, not putting the policy, not speaking to the issues that are again founded in the hearts of men and women that traditionally would be beneficial to the Democratic Party. That's our fault. Even though I'm doing my best to be all of what I believe it is to be a Democratic candidate, oftentimes that's lost in a myriad of issues of past experiences that I'm just another one of them. You know, so unless there's someone that is astute, definitely really, really looking, that have a relationship with me, or just literally being led by the Spirit, they know who I am. And they may share that, but in the midst of all, and not saying that I'm so much better than everyone else, but there is an issue of being an anomaly in a Democratic delegation, that are status quo in a Democratic delegation that really do want to get along to be alone. A Democratic Party that thinks that we've arrived. And I understand the numbers. You know, as a council member, I understand I have a 7-5. In the House, it's going to be 105. I cannot right now say that I will have the support of the majority of the existing Democratic leadership in both either the House or the Senate. But that does not in any way will impact what my legislation will be. I have to quite honestly say that if I was able to get the successes that I have with a 7-5, that I'm gonna have that same success in the House. Because at the end of the day, many times the issues that impact humanity at its core, everybody can come to the table with that. And even as an elected official, you know, there are white Republicans that will say, I know you the real deal. I might not agree. I hate when people say that because I think everybody's supposed to agree with me, right? But so I'm like, that's news to me that you don't agree with me. But, you know, I may not agree, but you're true. I know who you are. I know you're going to tell the honest. You're not. And what our Black Democratic person need to realize that at the coffee table, they're saying the opposite about them. And that should be a concern, you know, so.
You are an educator.
Yes.
So it's safe to say that you don't have to run for office. You chose to do this. You've been Metro Council representative of the North Baton Rouge District 2 for 12 years. It would be 12 years next year.
Yes.
And you're term limited, and so you're seeking a state representative slot. In that you don't have to do this, in that you're not getting huge compensation for this. What is your motivation to run for office? You could be an advocate in other ways besides holding a seat. So what is it that motivates you to seek office as opposed to other forms of advocacy?
Right. So I was literally called into politics. It is truly, you know, I was just sharing the other day when the Lord called me to run for office, I could not speak in public. You know, I'm social. I've always been, you know that. But a speech, you've never heard me make a speech or stand before anyone. I actually had a fear of speaking in public. And I also, I mean, everything becomes black and star. And it as soon as, you know, and I was speaking to people, my pastor, saying, you know, I believe the Lord is calling me to run for state representative. And he was like, I could see that. And then I continued to get confirming words and and spending just a lot of time in prayer. And I think what set me up for this, if you will, is the fact that I'm 3 generations. So I've heard from my parents, both sets of my grandparents and my parents, what Scotlandville looked like. And actually, when I ran, I thought it was just Scotlandville. I did not know it was Bacon, Brownsville, and Beechwood and all that. But I did, and there was no North Baton Rouge defined the boundaries that we see as North Baton Rouge now. So it literally was a calling. But the other flip side is usually when people run for office, it's from a place of I'm not going to say neediness, but I grew up as what was middle class then. I grew up in a family where I honestly was never told no, you know, but I also did not just ask for anything. So when I go into my community and I know the historical perspective as to what the losses were with Scotlandville and that, you know, the sacrifices of an I-110 killing our economic corridor along Scenic and Scotlandville, the Baton Rouge Airport expansion, the North Wastewater. So I see all of this in the houses, not having a middle-class subdivision for 40 years, and we being blamed for it. And so I get a righteous indignation, and I'm like, no, y'all owe us some money. So that's the way I legislate. I don't legislate from a position of neediness or wanting. I'm operating from a place where this disenfranchisement has starved our people, but you hold us to the same value system. You say we all should have houses, but you won't build any, and you took 3 to 4. You say that we should have jobs, but you aren't hiring. You take our neighborhood high school, Skylandville, and you turn it into a magnet, and you move kids from other areas. So these parents in Skylandville got to move closer to their kids in Zachary, Baker, and Central. So you owe me. You cannot cause our communities to not prosper and then blame us for failure. And so that is the mentality that I operate in, and I go for the cash. I mean, I do change policy. I think it's ridiculous that we had a policy where someone that has a marijuana charge gets fired and you got to come back in 3 years, whereas you don't serve even 6 months in jail. So changing that policy, reentry, making sure that that legacy way that we appointed persons after they ascend to another level or pass away unexpectedly, that there's not just a legacy transition with spouses and everybody else left out, that democracy continues. So I do believe, and I have been successful in asking for what I want. I think as elected officials, especially in the Black community, we should never go before a king and not ask. That's what they're for. So I'm always asking. I'm asking for the sidewalks, and I get them. The ER, I got them. I'm asking for the $6 million for housing. And though it took 2 years of hell, I got it. We talked about, and when I say I mean my community, we said, no, you're not going to move the Baton Rouge Zoo, and you're going to put $30 million in each phase, and we got it. If we don't ask, we won't get. So we have to ask. We have to put a mandate, and it is up to them to tell us why. And then that's when you start seeing prejudice. You see pride. And I don't care how much money, people do not want to be seen that way. And so we have to use what we got. If we have to play that card, we have to play it.
Can we talk about the Metro Council
Let's do it.
For just a minute?
Sure.
There's a push among conservative circles, as I understand it, to fundamentally change the construct of the Metro Council. There's a push for at-large seats, which is something that they had in the past, and they're trying to revive. There's a push for a city manager that the council approves, as opposed to the mayor approving. What's your relationship like with the majority of the Metro Council?
So it's really weird, but I don't. My relationship is basically for them to support whatever I want them to support. I don't have that buddy system. I don't have the friendship. I don't do a lot of. I don't fellowship afterwards. I mean, they literally serve one purpose in my life, and it is to be part of the success of my community with a 7-5 vote or more. I don't know if that makes sense. I do have the previous council. I'll say my second term, I had the closest relationship with the 5 Black council persons, including myself. I don't have that necessarily among the Black. I do have cordial relationships. It does fluctuate. My most stable relationship are with the Pro Tem and Cleve Dunn because of the longevity that we have worked together. I appreciate having the sisterhood of Carolyn Coleman. We are great on most things. I have the support of Daryl when there are like-minded issues, but I can't say holistically I have that anymore. But certainly as it relates to the Republican Party, it is basically all about their vote. Because you can't vote against, like in January, vote denying 40-some% of the people to have a 6th seat and then be my friend the rest of the year.
Sure.
And so that's how I see this. Not that I hold it against them,
it was
but
hubris,
that's who you are.
Too.
Yeah.
It was pure hubris.
Yeah.
They let us come in there and talk for 2.5, 3 hours, and they just sat back because they already knew what they were going to do. And when we had exhausted all of our speakers, they just, okay, motion, second, move on.
Yeah, that's disrespectful to me.
Yeah.
So, I see you.
So going back to these at-large seats that they're trying to put, I see it as a power grab. They see the complexion of this city changing. They realize that they can't do a whole lot about that. So if we can't massage it one way, we'll manipulate it another. We'll change all the rules.
Right.
Who's going to call them on that?
Oh, it's
once
been
you
called.
Leave the Metro Council?
Now that's a problem.
Because I have heard you. I watched the Metro Council meetings. Who's going to call them on these activities once your term is completed?
Right. So, the way this conversation opened was when my colleague Donna Collins-Lewis was terming, and she wanted to look into changing the plan of government to include an at-large, and she was hoping to be the person in that position. The manipulation came in her choosing her committee. We started getting the business community, the chamber, other businesses that, like you said, really want to maintain a certain degree of power. And that's not a bad thing, but it exists, And so things got left, things went left. Every time it would come up, I was like, no, we don't need to, we're not going to even vote on this. So they would so before former Councilwoman Coleman, Donna Collins-Lewis left, she gave a report. Well, when Rowdy Gode came in without competition or opposition, he wrote a letter to all of us wanting to pick up there. And we were like, no, you just get in here,
Yeah.
So we have managed to hold off this entire 2 years. But I don't know what, as bad as I want to move from the House to the House, I am 100% concerned about my seat. And my constituents are as well. I'm like, please don't not vote for me because you want to keep me, because you miss it. There's more ahead. There's more work, but I don't know. We're having conversations about settling the Scott Wilson situation with Gary Chambers, Mike McCallahan, and Eugene Collins. That's 2 years. I'm the only one in the room talking about it. I'm the only one in the room putting an agenda item. But Karen Schaller, filed one day, and 2 months later we were talking about it in executive session. So that's what I'm dealing with. As it relates to a city manager, currently under the Metro Council, we are over the council administrator. We are the position in that office, public relations, and also the parish attorney. If with a 7-5 right now, all of their decisions are impacted by whether or not they will lose favor with the powers that be, the majority. So if we have a city manager who now is in that same position, we would be in serious trouble.
I agree.
Because, I don't care what blackface they put in those positions, they still are concerned about losing their job. We lost the last 3 parish attorneys because they lost favor with a white Republican council member who influenced the rest of the council. So it's a real concern, and it's bad enough with the parish attorney, that being the case, because we aren't getting fair representation in any case. And the conversation when they come to the mic is going to be based on that. Who's looking at me and those stares and those eyes, and they'll flip on you like a minute. So I do not think we should have a city manager.
The Supreme Court said that Louisiana's congressional delegation is improperly balanced, that there should be a second majority-minority seat. The state legislature gerrymandered themselves into the positions that they currently hold, albeit with the support of some black representatives and senators, because for whatever reason they feel like they need 80% black in order to win a seat. And I have steadfastly said, if you can't win with a seat that's 60% as opposed to 80%, maybe you don't need to be in the seat in the first place. But this also happened with the school board, and it also happened with the Metro. In every area of government where representation had to be reapportioned based upon the census, we were bullied out of seats that should legitimately be ours. The Supreme Court said something about the congressional aspect of it. Who's going to speak on the state level? Who's going to speak on the Metro Council level? Who's going to speak on the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board level?
Right. So the school board has so many issues, it
does.
That I'll go straight to the Metro Council. So for the Metro Council, first of all, the person, again, we go back to the 7-5. There's one individual that chooses the demographer for the Metro Council, and it is the parish attorney. I'm sorry, it is the council administrator. The same gentleman, the same firm that was, and I've forgotten the name.
He cleaned up because he worked for everybody. Every meeting I went to, he was the guy that they were talking to.
So supposedly there was a committee in the council. I have asked who was on the committee. I have asked for meeting notes. I have not gotten any of that. And again, who's gonna make them? So, but what I do know is that on the list of criteria that was set, one of them was minority representation. So we have a white guy with all white, like 5 white employees. We have this one black guy who is his sole, all black, I believe. I can't remember. No, the white guy is by himself. No one else is working for him. That black guy, that his firm had like 4 or 5 black persons or women or whatever. Both of them received 3 points. How does that happen? So those are the things that are going on in our community with our representation. And as long as we have a 7-6, we literally are going to not be able to have a voice. If there's someone that's on the planning committee, like I'm on the planning commission right now, I've never wanted to be on the commission because I've been about my community. But when I put my name on the planning commission, all of a sudden somebody else wanted it. That's how it works. So we have people on airport committee. They still, as long as we have a 7-5, they got to play ball because otherwise they're gonna lose their position. Our pro tem, who is awesome, he still got to play ball. So all of these are issues where they have us at a disadvantage. Now, I believe we have more power than we think. But I can't I don't know what all their dynamics are. That's who I am. I'm older, I'm more experienced, I grew up differently, and I got a little crazy in me. So I can't.
Amen.
So I can't, and it's good crazy, I tell people, I've actually met persons and they're quiet and come out of town and they're listening, and at the end of the conversation, they'll say, "I was told that you were crazy. You're not crazy at all." And I say, "Yes, I am crazy, like a fox." So I own all of that, and all of that is what makes me successful. And, I do a lot of praying. I find scriptures. I know what Esther did. That's who I really read. So for everything that I do, I could find a Bible scripture that lines up with it.
My concern with regard to reapportionment is...
You're very good at going back to the subject.
Well,
that's good.
That's my task.
That's your host, yeah.
Is it something that's going to be litigated in a court? And if so, whose court is it going to? Is it going to the state Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Is it going to the federal court? I get gravely concerned about the local federal court passing judgments, and then they're overruled by the Fifth Circuit.
Right.
I just saw that happen with juveniles at Angola. Judge Dick said one thing, and the Fifth Circuit comes back and says, no, we're going to hold that until later on. Is the same thing going to happen when it comes to reapportionment for the Metro Council? Is there a plan to litigate, to change reapportionment? So
we have been, and when I say we, the Metro Council, and specifically Cleve Dunn, Councilman Cleve Dunn Jr., have been asking about this very topic and we're having these conversations. We have not been able to honestly be able to get assistance from the Louisiana NAACP. So there are some conversations on litigation, how it's going to file, who's going to file. I don't know the specifics, but I do know what you see play out across the country where it is like the NAACP that is filing. It does not appear that that's going to be the way the Metro Council is to move forward with litigation.
But is this not on a clock? Because
that's why we're having to move.
The longer we wait to litigate this matter, the less attention it's going to get. Sure. And pretty soon they're going to say, well, in a couple of years you're going to have a new election, and we don't want to do anything to mess with the election. So
there is a time, and again, we spent a lot of time waiting. We were waiting, trying to work with the Louisiana NAACP, and so now we're on a fast track of trying to get it done. That's the most I could speak to that, and they are very much aware of the time constraints.
Okay, that's where you are currently. You're about to move, or you're seeking to move to the state legislature. Same problem exists in the state legislature. Yes. Who's responsible for getting that matter litigated? Again. And is there any activity taking place where that's concerned?
So I have not heard of there being, it does appear to be something that is mute now with the legislature, and I don't have a hand in that, but I think, again, just as I'm saying, where's the voice? Who's going to do the push? What are the powers that are behind the whole situation? If we have a majority, not a majority, but we have a significant amount of black leaders that are literally for Jeff Landry. We have a significant amount of black leaders that are for Hunter Lundy. I've heard them, I've seen it, and they've told me. So, how does that play into it? We have to be marching to one beat, and because of egos and self-imposed kingship, if you will, that's not going to happen.
Well, it begs the question, and I wasn't going to ask it, but you just put it out there. I'd be remiss not to ask it. How is it that Negroes? No, I'm not going to ask you to name people. Okay. How is it that Negroes can support Jeff Landry and support Hunter Lundy, and not support the black Democratic candidate Shawn Wilson? And who cleared the path so that it's Shawn Wilson and almost nobody else? I know that there are other Democrats in the race, but the path was cleared so that Shawn Wilson would be the Democratic candidate. Whose brilliant idea was it to make Shawn Wilson the Democratic candidate for governor?
Well, I think he came in with an endorsement from the current.
Yes.
So that
whose idea
I don't
was
know.
that?
I have no idea. Now,
Because you're telling me that blacks, and not just black politicians, black business people, are lining up behind Jeff Landry. They've already got their hands out as to what they're going to get. When, and just pay attention to what they get so that you'll know who it was.
But we had it in
They're
June.
lined up for Jeff Landry. They're lined up for Mr. Lundy. But somebody made the decision to clear the path for Mr. Wilson. And I'm asking you, who made that decision?
So I'm not into that. That like, as I said, as a councilwoman, I see from afar. I see what's going on in the school system. I see what's going on with the state. But I have to stay true to the Metro Council and what I'm trying to do with my own community. What I will say is that a lot of this has to do with who's going to get appointments. So, again, we don't look out for the mass of community. You know, that's why our communities and crime look. So the way deals are made at the state level is if I vote, if I have you, you're going to be put on the Southern University board. That's one person who sells out their entire community to be on a board. Or if you don't run, I can get you a $250 appointment. That is how things operate. And again, going back to why people are voting Republican or why many people don't have a lot of confidence in the Democratic Party is they want to go with where they think the money and the power is. And that is where we are. And there is a sacrifice. So this is not a judgment call. When you stand up for right, for people that are the least of these, you become a target with your own people. And so going into politics for me, the people that I judge the way they deal things, I don't do it anymore. Because I know your own people will turn it. It's just that too shall pass, and you stay focused and you do what's right. But everybody doesn't have that. They're not built that way. So, I mean, we literally lose jobs. I know when I didn't vote a certain way, my job with East Baton Rouge Parish was threatened. It was eliminated. And if you cannot stay afloat, all of that matters. So, and then you can say like, well, I'm sacrificing, but, you know, I mean, this happened to Michael Jackson when he ran, you know, the black community, black Democratic Party did not support him. So this is we'll go all the way back to A.C. Belton. You know, A.C. Belton laid the foundation for Second Ward's Voters League, did everything, sacrificed. Soon as we get to the place where we can make Scotlandville its own
community.
carbon, the educated black folks were against him. I believe it sent him to an early grave. So this is nothing new.
I grew up in Scotland.
Oh, you know, I know you know.
I remember that.
You know, you know.
Yes.
So that's all. That's what we're dealing with now.
Assuming that you ascend to the state legislature, and assuming that the structure of the legislature is essentially unchanged, what do you think you can do to impact the legislature for your community to bring about the progress that you seek?
It will not change any different from what I do now. I start out with a vision. I have a list of things that I want to do. The only thing that I have not, since 2012, been able to accomplish as of this date is the grocery store. What I also find out, which is new, is that every idea that we've come up, and myself for our community, just like what happened with A.C. Belton, we have a surrogate trying to do the same thing because they are either they're already elected or they're connected to a foundation or whatever. So, you know, it's always that, but, you know, at the end we'll prevail. But I do believe still that everybody wants what's right. And at the end of the day, this entire state, which is on the low path of everything, this city will not be able to fully overcome all of its maladaptive assets unless they are equitable in making sure that every community thrives. And that will be my continued preach. And I think that's where, so I can't just put money in one building. I have to talk about the building, the house, contracts. I have to talk about every aspect of quality of life assets, and I need to go for it. One of the main things I want to do is bring funding to Baker High School, the only school in all of Louisiana totally devastated by the 2016 flood that has not been rebuilt. Those are the kind of things that I want. I already know that I want to impact. I want to impact Ronisonville on a 10-year track to closure. I want to stop other parishes from being able to dump on the Alson community. So, you know, the highways, 964, Thomas Road, scenic highway is not scenic. So my base is still the area that I represent now, but it just goes further to US 61, that end of scenic highway, 964, Groom, and all but those are state highways that need help. And so the recipe is not going to change. And I do believe that I'll be successful.
You mentioned Baker High School not having been rebuilt. Does the fact that Baker has an independent school district play any role in that? Have they not been good advocates for their own rebuilding program? Or is it a state legislative problem? So
it's some of all of that. They have not had the proper leadership either on the board. On the board as well as that is control. I'll just say the board because they control the superintendent and what all happens at Baker. So I will say that is a problem. However, I still believe that when you put money, there are certain mandates that must be followed. But we have to have somebody steering the ship. I am a councilwoman. However, I have, through a vision, $25 million that's building a mega shelter at Southern University. I'm a councilwoman. So it doesn't, the borders won't change if you have a vision that makes sense. And people will carry the water for you long after. I brought this idea before the pandemic. They're doing a groundbreaking, within a couple of months. People don't even know I was behind it. They will know. But, so, yeah, everything I see is not a barrier, it's an opportunity. And so that's how I operate.
With regard to education, you are an educator. I had Deidris Landison here a couple months back, and I was asking him about the proliferation of charter schools in East Baton Rouge Parish. I'm not a huge charter school person. You might be. I don't know your position on that. From what I can read and research, while charters may work in other places, they have not been effective here. Right. And yet we continue to have charter after charter after charter. And I was asking him about that, and one of the things that he said that I did not know, but I'm sure you knew, but I did not know, is that Bessie can overrule the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board with regard to charters. The school board can say no, and Mr. Lehner said that they did say no in a couple of cases, and Bessie came back and overruled them, and the charters went into place. Is that something that, as a legislator on the state level, you can address, or is Bessie an independent board that does not have to follow the dictates of the state legislature? So
they are, of course, an independent board, but again, they are all elected. even if there is, I believe that from the school board position, there are only 2 charters that they should approve. I don't think right now. I think we should be at our max, but those that are homegrown and the ones that currently exist, but there should be, just like we have to turn over all assets to them. When they fail, they should have to turn all assets back to us.
Including facilities.
Oh yeah. Just like, the same mandate.
Yes.
So when they feel that when charters start feeling that there's that kind of threat as it relates to them working together, that's going to be a game changer. So let's have reciprocity, whereas our schools we lose all our assets for a charter. If charters fail, they lose all their assets to us. And so that's the way I believe we can move forward. I'm not sure if that's at the state level, but I know when the charters were first formed, that was all legislation, So, let's just have, if we're going to have an even playing field, that needs to be part of it.
Okay. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I'd certainly like to see something like that happen. What kind of influence do you think the Legislative Black Caucus can have with the incoming governor, presuming that it will not be Mr. Wilson? I won't say who it will be, but presuming that it will not be Mr. Wilson, which means that more than likely it'll be a Republican.
They need a black agenda. If you have the Legislative Black Caucus, have them all have town hall meetings in their respective districts. From that meeting or charrette or whatever they have, there's a black agenda. Then they come together and they bring it together on how it would work. Now that takes a lot of humility that we don't have. But if you have a black agenda and you come with 48% of the people in this district saying this is what we want, and it is publicized, it is a checklist, and there is legislation or changes that lines up with those, we could work together. That is what, otherwise, it's a big black party. But if we want to get serious, we need a state black agenda, and everybody comes together. That's what it would take. And we could use that same agenda for the Democratic Party. It's a massive idea, and it will transcend and make the accountability. This does when stuff come up, does it line up? And you don't have to fight everything that comes, but you definitely need to at least especially if we're the minority, at least get your stuff through. But that takes coming together, that takes humility, and that has to be where everybody can be achieved. And that's part of our problem.
Election is on October 14th?
No, it's on October 30th through October 7th.
Look at that camera.
Yes.
And tell our viewers, our listeners, why they should vote for Chauna Banks.
You should vote for Chauna Banks because of my passion for progress, the ability to speak to issues that impact voters, not because I read in a book or someone heard, but because I live it. I'm out there in the community. I'm Shirley Chisholm's daughter, not really, but I'm bossed and I'm bought. I fear nobody but God. And I am accessible to the people. I have a history of getting things done at the federal, state, and local level. Once I make up my mind and I've done the research, very seldom will that change. But there's a certain amount of accountability that I bring, and I legislate and delegate if though I am my own constituent. And I think that's what sets me apart. I do believe I'm an anomaly in the political arena, and I believe that is how I have been mandated from being a watchtower for my community, whether I am in this seat or not. So that brings something, I believe, to the table that you haven't seen, and together we win, not just Chauna Banks, but everybody that I'll represent.
Chauna Banks, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.